Hello and welcome. I'm James Derian, the director of the Center for International Security Studies here at the University of Sydney. And we're going to do number 8 in CISS Conversations today with Dr. Allison Macfarlane, who's visiting us from the University of British Columbia, where she directs the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs.
Correct.
Did I get that right?
You
Good.
did.
She has been straddling, some say, bridging the gap between academia and policy for some time now. She was in the President Obama's administration for a few years, working on nuclear waste issues, but also a blue ribbon commission on the nuclear future that we hope to gaze into during this talk, because our nuclear future is very, how to put it, uncertain these days.
Yes, it is.
And largely because of what's happening in the Middle East, but also because of issues happening at home in Australia. But in Canada, you're in Australia for, I take it, a look into our own nuclear waste predicament.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that. But we usually begin by asking our speakers, our interlocutors, our informants, what path did you take to get here? Tell us a little bit about your own intellectual journey.
I did not take a straight path.
Okay.
I took a very circuitous route to get here. So I started off as a geologist. My PhD is in geology, and I did fieldwork in the Nepalese Himalaya.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then decided I wanted to do something more practical and concrete with my knowledge, and got into nuclear waste disposal in the U.S. and also how to deal with excess nuclear weapons materials in the U.S. Yeah. And so I did some postdocs in that field, developed more of an expertise, and then ended up as faculty in a number of different universities in the U.S. Then I had another excursion into government, where I was the chair of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, their nuclear regulator. And after that, went back into academia and then moved from the U.S. to Canada.
Now, I always want to ask this question, but I haven't before, is where are the politics more vicious, inside U.S. government or U.S. academia?
The politics were very vicious in the U.S. Congress.
Okay, there
and
you
I
go.
think it's only gotten worse since then.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad to watch. It really is.
It's very sad.
Well, moving into the world that's more decorous and full of agreement, nuclear waste. Now, you're in Australia doing some research. Is this comparative, looking at what problems Australia faces to Canada or overall global?
Yeah, it's comparative. It's, Australia over the past almost 10 years has gone through a siting process that failed. And so we're trying to draw lessons from that for how to go forward again with maybe a better siting process. What are the elements that you need, both on the technical side, but more really on the socio-political side.
And this isn't a history of solutions and victory. It's been one step forward, several steps backwards. I mean, in the United States, is Yucca Mountains operating?
Oh, no.
It's not operating.
Oh, no.
Tell us a little bit about what happened with Yucca Mountain.
So this was an ill-advised way of finding a repository site for your high-level nuclear waste and spent nuclear fuel. So the approach taken in the United States was sort of a decide, announce, defend approach. They actually had outlined a reasonable approach in the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982, which would have allowed detailed characterization of 3 sites and then selection of one of them. Congress started to balk at the cost of doing that detailed characterization of 3 sites. So in their great wisdom, Congress selected one site, the Yucca Mountain site, to examine. And it took a really long time. Eventually, the Department of Energy submitted a license application to the regulator. And then the government changed. President Obama was elected, and President Obama's Department of Energy pulled the license application, and Congress has not provided funding for moving forward on nuclear waste disposal since 2010.
After how many billions of dollars?
After, I think they spent around 7 or 8, and they've collected $40 or $50 billion from the, costs from the electricity customers, which Congress is currently using to offset the national debt.
Well, at least they're not using it for the war in Iraq.
Well, maybe they are.
Yeah, small solace. Now, I've been reading up on this a bit, and according to the big tech bros, they say these small modular reactors are going to solve a lot of problems. The problem of AI is going to require a lot of juice. We're talking gigawatts. That nuclear waste will be reduced. That the economies of scale will be to the benefit of these small modular. Did they get any of that right?
Not really.
Not really. Okay.
I mean, I'm not convinced, first, that AI is going to need a lot more energy, say, 20 years from now, because
Right.
I imagine I hope there will be advances made where it's not using as much energy, right? Okay, so that's one thing. Let's set that aside. Small modular reactors, for the most part, don't exist right now.
What about in nuclear submarines?
Yeah, their nuclear submarines have reactors. You're not going to use that,
Okay.
okay? Because it uses fuel that's extremely highly enriched. That's how it...
Plus, we need those nuclear submarines for the AUKUS deal in Australia.
Yeah, I guess. That's another story. So anyway, the only countries that have actually built a demonstration model that's currently operating is China and Russia. And I doubt many people would be enthusiastic about buying a Russian SMR. And the Chinese one, they've got one, but it took a long time to come online. And so they're operating one. That doesn't mean that they've got a ready supply chain. The US, Canada, Europe, other parts of the world don't have any small modular reactors yet. Nobody's even demonstrated them. Okay, there are 2 being built in North America, 3 now, I guess. One is by a company named Kairos that's being constructed in Tennessee. One in Canada at the Darlington site in Ontario. And then one in Wyoming by TerraPower, which is Bill Gates's outfit.
That's right.
But currently, these things are still in the imagination land because we don't know how they're going to operate once they actually are made. Now, when things are engineered, fighter jets, something complex, nuclear power plants, you design it on a computer, you build a demonstration model. You will find that your computer model was wrong in places when you actually build a real thing, right? And then if you want to sell it commercially, again, you're going to have to make adjustments. That's a whole nother step. The demonstration piece and the actual commercial selling piece will take years to get to and will take many billions of dollars.
Right. But it is interesting. I mean, partially that absence is the presence that gives the tech bros the propaganda advantage because they don't have the history of 3 Mile Island. They're kind of a new, flashy technology.
They think they are.
They think they are. But just as prone to accident, you think it will be? Or?
I think one has to assume that.
Yeah.
Just to be on the safe side, these reactors are going to need similar kinds of safety measures. They're smaller, so the source term won't be as large, but that doesn't mean they won't make a mess if things go haywire.
Now, economies of scale. When the 3 Mile Island or others, we're talking like 1,000 gigawatts, 100 gigawatts of something very, very big. How many gigawatts is one of these small nuclear modules?
Well, so the definition of a small modular reactor is anything less than 300 megawatts.
Megawatts, okay.
Right. So some of them butt up against that 300 megawatt limit. Some are less than 100 megawatts. And then there are micro reactors, which are in the 5, 10, or 15 megawatt range. And so it sort of depends on what you're looking at. But economy of scale works the opposite direction.
That's what I thought.
A postdoc and I just published a paper on this saying just this, that there isn't an escape of the laws of economics, right? So it's just simply much cheaper to build one large light water reactor pressure vessel than it is to build 5 or 10 small ones.
Right.
You can't escape from that.
Right.
I mean, sure, a large plant will be more expensive in total than a small plant, but per energy produced, the small plant's going to be more expensive.
What about waste? Same risk for both?
Or worse.
Worse.
Yeah. So again, something I've looked into as well. And small modular reactors, depending on the kind, the waste problem is the same or it will be worse. It will exacerbate the waste problem.
And could you enrich the waste from the small reactors?
You could, depending on the kind, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there are serious proliferation issues both on the front end and the back end for some of these small modular reactors because a number of them require fuel more highly enriched in uranium-235, the isotope uranium-235, which is what is used for weapons when it's really highly enriched, right? And so it's high enough that it causes more proliferation concerns. We'll certainly need a higher level of safeguards and security, and that will all add a lot to the cost.
There seems to be a convergence from, call it the left and eco.
Right.
The eco-activist argument that we need this because they're cleaner and they're less risky. Then you have the right who come in and say, well, the Chinese are doing it. Geopolitically, we're going to need it to sort of wean ourselves from oil dependency, coal dependency, which is where they converge with the ecological arguments. This convergence, though, seems to be based on a lot of dis or misinformation, though, it sounds like, from what you're presenting as a geologist and as a scientist.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
So we're getting corporate interest.
There's a lot of Kool-Aid being drunk by people.
There is, yeah. Oliver Stone seemed to have drunk it because he came out with a documentary recently.
Right. Yes, there are a lot of people who. So this has been a very different model for nuclear development than the previous model with big reactors. So you have a lot of investors, Silicon Valley investors, venture capitalists who started pouring money into these small modular reactor designers. Okay. And somebody once told me there's a lot of stupid money in venture capital.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of due diligence being done. I actually asked one of these venture capitalists, a guy named Ray Rothrock, how this was going to work. Because from my point of view, there wasn't going to be a reactor for decades. Yeah. So how could you make money on this? And his response was, well, you don't really need a reactor. You just need the company to go public. Onto the stock market. And so that's when you make money. Yeah.
There is a bit of a bubble burst. It's not, growth investments here. It's bubble burst.
Right.
We've seen this before. I mean, even obviously there was the AI winter where we had this long period where people first hyping AI, the long winter or never delivering, then suddenly this spike and then a bubble. And we're just waiting for that to burst.
Right.
I think they're not truly analogs, nuclear energy and AI, or nuclear fusion, which is another one.
Fusion is somewhat similar to this,
To
SMRs.
It's similar hyped technology.
Yes. Much further away from becoming a reality.
Yeah.
An energy source.
Well, that sort of begs the question: if we have this evidence and we know solar's gotten much cheaper.
And wind.
And wind's gotten cheaper, even though
batteries,
all that. As someone who studies the military-industrial complex, is there some vested interest? Obviously, for nuclear powers, there is to keep the nuclear industry going. You have to have trained engineers. You have to have universities pumping out the people who can still build this stuff and manage it. We're learning that in Australia now as we're thinking we're going to suddenly,
Right.
overnight, build a nuclear critical infrastructure to
Right.
accommodate AUKUS. How do you, I mean, that's a juggernaut, you know. How do you turn that around? We can't use the metaphor of an oil tanker anymore, trying to turn it around, because that conjures up different images. But what do you do? I mean, pressure from below, we're not seeing, you know, in the way previously you had an anti-nuclear movement after Fukushima, Three Mile Island. There's been a couple others. We could go all the way back to Chalk River in Canada, which most people don't even know about.
Right.
As an aside, do you know that Jimmy Carter, a nuclear engineer, was brought up to help put out the fires at Chalk River?
No, really?
Yeah, as a cadet,
Interesting.
naval cadet.
Huh.
So Jimmy Carter cut his teeth on nuclear energy in Canada. But that's another story for another time. What can you do, mobilize, I mean, knowledge, as you've done, but where's the political will?
There are a lot of politicians, at least in the United States and in Canada, that I see, and I assume there's some, although Australia sounds like you backed off supporting small modular reactors or nuclear energy recently. But in some of these other countries, there's a lot of politicians who support this on the right and the left because of all the things that you said earlier, you know, climate change, green people, blah, blah, blah. At the same time, I think reality is a different object. When these things are actually built and people see the price tags, which I imagine will be quite high unless they're severely subsidized by governments, people are going to say, well, actually, you know, and these things aren't ready. You can't buy one now, right? Because they don't exist yet. They haven't been proven. So I think you're looking at 10, 20 years before these things are actually available. In 10 or 20 years, do you think solar is going to get more expensive or cheaper? Yeah. Wind is going to get more expensive or cheaper? Batteries, we're going to be developing different kinds of batteries.
Geothermal?
Yeah, I think that, you know, if you take a longer view, I mean, I assume some of these will be made, but I think people are going to start saying, well, wait a minute, it's kind of expensive, and you would need a lot of small modular reactors to be made of one particular kind for you to start to drop the price to an unreasonable level from an extremely unreasonable level.
Now, in our previous CISS conversations, we had Hugh Gustafson, who you know, speaking about the role sometimes of, you know, pressure from below, obviously, willing to do studies, looking anthropology upwards, not just simply downwards. You have taken a sort of horizontal, taking science wherever it takes you. But what about the role of the individual? Hugh mentioned Hazel O'Leary as the energy secretary who stood up against defense, you know, state. Even the president, or I guess Clinton was probably on her side somewhat.
I assume.
But she stood up and she marshaled the knowledge necessary to sway the minds that are willing to be persuaded by rationality, but also build up a political, played a little bit of political gamesmanship. Is there anybody doing that now in this administration or past administration? You were in the Obama administration. Did you see individuals willing to step up and play that role? I mean, you did, certainly in the regulatory.
Right.
But now, as people at the level of cabinets, you know.
Not in this
Not
Trump
now.
cabinet, obviously.
But what about in the cabinet of President Obama
Biden.
before?
Or Biden.
Or Biden, yeah.
No, it's an interesting phenomenon to watch as a social scientist, right?
Yeah.
With this nuclear energy. I mean, a lot of people are just jumping on the bandwagon, but they have no knowledge. They don't seem to be interested in asking the question, does this exist? Is this viable? They're just believing the hype. Why is that? Well, because I think, okay, and I haven't confirmed this, but because this was largely funded initially by venture capital and investment companies, recipients of the funding decided to hire public affairs firms
Yeah.
to push out the story of this technology, even though it didn't exist.
With less regulation, because it's not governmental, it's corporate.
And so, exactly. So I talked to a lot of journalists, and quite a few of them have told me that they are constantly barraged by these firms asking them to do puff pieces on their technology.
Yeah.
And so, and they do. And so I'll berate the journalists for saying, well, why didn't you ask about this? And why are you just assuming their language when they say these reactors are cheaper, are safer, produce less waste? Why do you believe that?
Yeah.
Because it's a nice selling point, but it's probably not true.
Well, I've just been getting some of that information myself. But interesting enough, it was about a nuclear reactor that was built in the Philippines under Marcos and originated from the Atoms for Peace program. Now, it never went operational, largely because the new president, Aquino, said, no, we're not going to have it. So there was political will there. It had to have a revolution. They had the people power revolution. There had to be a disaster. But now, I don't know who's behind it. I'm getting videos in my mailbox about restarting this reactor from the 1980s.
That's not
An analog.
Analog is not bad.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Analog has its advantages
Yes.
because you're not linked to the internet, and so you don't have to worry so much about cybersecurity risks.
Yes.
Okay, there are advantages to analog, but starting a reactor that is 40
It must be
plus
corroding
years
or-
old, you'd have to replace probably lots of the parts.
So I'm not going to buy any stock in that one.
Yeah, and it would cost a lot.
But that is interesting about the regulation versus, corporate, private versus public initiatives for nuclear energy. When Eisenhower first put forward the Atoms for Peace, which I'm very interested in, because it was the first, comprehensive attempt to bring clean energy safely to the world, but also bring nuclear nonproliferation and control at a global level. Now, some see this as just sort of another form of nuclear colonialism by the United States. Others see it as a failed because of bureaucratic infighting. A lot of different arguments. First, I'd like to get your perspective on the Atoms for Peace, but what about if there's a new president who just, it's the 70th anniversary, let's give him another shot?
I think more in energy transitions. Okay, so if we think of this in terms of energy transitions, all right, in the 1700s, people started moving into cities. They needed a more concentrated form of energy than wood.
Yeah.
And so by the 1800s, there was a move to coal because in part of the need for more concentrated form of energy. And by the way, they'd cut down a lot of the trees, so there wasn't that much wood available. So, they moved to coal. That helps the Industrial Revolution. Then you get into the early 20th century. You have these big ships going around. World War I, you have fighter planes. You need to have an even more concentrated form of energy, which is oil.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have this transition to oil, all right? And now, of course, we're undergoing another energy transition off of fossil fuels because they're killing our planet. So we're moving to renewables, etc. Nuclear never satisfied any energy transition need. The need for nuclear was political. It was, and this is where Atoms for Peace comes in, it was to legitimize the atom, legitimize the bomb in a sense, to give it a good side, and from my point of view. But also Sheila Jasanoff's written about this. And so it did that work, but it really didn't fulfill an energy need, an energy transition need. And that's in part probably why it's never really taken off that much. I think globally, nuclear supplies about 9% of energies. In the U.S., it's about 19% of the electricity supply. In Canada, it's, similar amount of the electricity supply, a little less. And so it's not clear to me that it will ever supply a real energy transition need. Now, the proponents will say, oh, yes, we need this because it's not fossil fuel, and we need baseload power or firm power, how it's been cleaned up and renamed. It's still not clear to me that that's true. I mean, I look at the example of South Australia. Yeah. South Australia often runs basically only on solar and wind and battery backup. So do we need this large amount or even a small amount of firm power? I don't know.
Well, I know several 100 million, or how many people live in France who would say, yes, we do need nuclear power still. Or, there are countries that are heavily dependent still on nuclear power.
Only France.
Only France,
well,
not South Korea.
Unless you're looking at other smaller countries that have fewer reactors but fewer other power plants too.
Yeah.
Armenia is wholly dependent on a very, very old set of reactors.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And earthquakes can do great damage to those reactors.
Yes.
Well, just this question, though, of I love your sort of historical overview, but also driving it was the scientific discovery. You couldn't have had any of this without Maxwell, changes in how we think about thermodynamics,
right.
Electromechanical dynamics, electromagnetic dynamics, and then quantum mechanics that got us the bomb. So scientists play a role in this.
Oh, sure.
And it's just interesting that more scientists like yourself haven't come out. Einstein as a scientist said, the atomic bomb has changed everything except our way of thinking. And we're heading for disaster or catastrophe because of that. There doesn't seem to be a groundswell of scientists right now standing up in the way you have and
no, there are just a few of us.
Yeah. You're also part of the Atomic Bulletin of Scientists. I believe you write for them. And
yeah, I do occasionally write for them.
Yeah, and as you know, the clock has ticked down to 85 seconds. Surely, is it just a feeling of we gave it our best shot, or what's going on in the scientific community? You can't speak for the scientific community, I know, but what's going on that there aren't those voices like we used to have before? Like Niels Bohr, an open letter to the United Nations, Einstein, we could go on the list, of many of them seen the horror of the atom bomb, and then they turned.
They've all died, the ones who've seen the horror of the atom bomb.
That's true.
We've lost that vivid memory. And, scientists have gone into activism, but maybe it's just different. I'll look at all the scientists who work on climate change.
Yes.
Right, and who have been trying to, and many governments and many countries have listened, with the exception of the United States and Canada to some degree. The physicists who were worried about atomic bombs, there are fewer. There are a few, but many, many, many fewer now.
Yeah. Yeah, who just refused to use Szilard, for instance, just refused to work on nuclear bombs and after that. And then there's always the geopolitical argument that if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And this is also the argument we were talking about with Hugh, is that, one of the lessons of the Iraq excursion, as President Trump likes to call this war, is that, some other country will make sure they have that bomb in the basement in the future as a deterrent.
Well, I think this war with Iran has only probably solidified in folks' minds that having a nuclear bomb is a good thing, which is really, really, really unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, this leads me to my last question that we sort of ask as a control question of people we have on CISS Conversations, is because we're nuclear issues, energy, weapons, sort of the theme of the year. Do you think in your lifetime we will see the use of a nuclear weapon, or worse, a nuclear war?
I really hope not, but I think that the world is an extremely unstable place right now. I think the U.S. is just unhinged. in how it's behaving. And so I think it's entirely possible.
I said it was going to be my last question, but maybe since it was, after all, your prime minister of Canada, Carney, who stood up in Davos and said, the middle powers have to stand up.
Yeah, they do.
Is that something you see as feasible? I mean, is that why you're in Australia as a fellow middle power to help solidify that solidarity?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really important. I think the middle powers have a lot of power. They have a lot of economic power. They have a lot of political power, but they have it only when they work together and band together, and they need to do that. Because the world basically is just full of three major bullies right now.
Yeah.
You know, Russia, China, and the U.S. And the U.S. is not anybody's friend. And even if Trump moves on, I don't know that things get better.
Yeah, I have a feeling Israel is a fair weather friend at this point.
Yeah.
Well, as a fellow middle power, I want to thank you for coming and helping build the solidarity and collaboration amongst. It's funny, they're all Commonwealth powers, though.
They are.
Former colonies, the empire band
Come
together.
on, there's France and Germany and all the Europeans. So
Japan kind of fits in there too somewhere.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I think where some people see middle powers will never get respect unless they go nuclear, which is kind of a scary thought, but that's also in the minds of some of leaders of Japan and Korea and even, I'm afraid, in Australia, which sits on a lot of uranium. That doesn't sound like a solution. We had Gareth Evans here a few weeks ago, and he was sounding the alarm about this.
Yeah.
It seems like perfect time for some middle power diplomacy, but instead AUKUS. You sort of like wake up. There's not going to be a technical fix to this problem.
Right. Well, AUKUS leaves Australia dependent on the U.S., and you guys have to ask yourselves, do you want to be dependent on the U.S.? Is the U.S. a reliable partner?
Well, believe it or not, there's a groundswell of people starting to believe that after the initial kind of cheerleading that still exists in some quarters for AUKUS, but it's being questioned at all levels in all parties, and former prime ministers like Malcolm Turnbull coming out against it and others. And yet within my own discipline, there's still this kind of faith that somehow it's going to sort of wobble its way through the technical and the worst, the economic. What weapons system program ever came in on budget? And something so complicated.
None of this stuff that's complex. These technologies that are complex and large, they don't ever come in on budget or on time.
Well, maybe Canada and Australia, to seal its middle power solidarity, should build a submarine together.
I'll leave that to you.
Well, thank you very much. We're very delighted to have had Professor Allison Macfarlane from the University of British Columbia here for our 8th CISS Conversation. Please join us online on our CISS YouTube channel, and we'll be back with more on nuclear matters, in energy, in weapons, and hopefully to shed some light and a ray of hope in some very dark times. So thank you very much, and over and out. Thank you.
Thanks.